It's that time of year. Time to pick out the very best Marvel Legends of 2025. Hey y'all, welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures, and it's time for our top 10 Marvel Legends of the year. Now, I've been doing this for the past 6 years, and I went back and watched some of those old videos so that you don't have to. Previous top figures of the year include White Rabbit, Spiral, and Captain Carter, so you never know which way this list is going to go. My top 10 lists are always just as much about the backstory of the characters as they are the figures themselves, so you'll see me defend my choices in some unique ways. So a couple of quick ground rules. These are comic figures only, no MCU. It was a pretty slim year for MCU figures anyway, and even the Fantastic Four figures got outclassed by their popcorn bucket in the shape of a Fantasticar. And no Spideys on this list. I know, but not to worry. Our favorite webhead gets his own top 10 list every year. So, who made the list? Well, it was a pretty solid year for Marvel Legends, but I honestly had a hard time finding 10 figures that I was just completely blown away by. You guys know me. I love those oddball characters, the ones that you never thought that we would see in 6-inch form, or ones that I have some kind of emotional connection to from a lifetime of reading comics. But occasionally, there's an A-list character that is so well done that you gotta give them their flowers. And that was the case with the figure in the 10 spot. I kinda like the mini comic waves. The packaging looks like a comic book, with the character's distinct title logo across the top, and even an old school corner box, one of my favorite parts of classic Marvel Comics. Fun fact, the corner boxes were created by Spider-Man's co-creator Steve Ditko to help Marvel mags stand out on newsstand shelves. There's a big plastic bubble so you can see a clear look at the entire figure. And, while they're kind of dumb out of the package, the mini comics do look pretty cool on display. Plus, this was a great wave. We continue to fill out the ranks of the astonishing X-Men with Beast, and we got 2 long-awaited figures needed to complete primary teams in Rachel Summers for Excalibur and X-Force's Feral. But the first spot on this list goes to the Silver Surfer. The Surfer has a long action figure history, dating back to the very first Toy Biz Marvel Superheroes line 35 years ago. But this is the best Surfer figure that we've seen. So with the Silver Surfer, a lot of people are probably going to argue, hey, this is just the same figure that came with the Galactus, HasLab. Well, guess what? Not everybody was able to get the Galactus HasLab, and that one was so uninspiring because of just the flat gray paint that they had on it. That really is what makes the difference in this. They say the clothes make the man. Well, in this case, the lack of clothes make the man. And this Silver Surfer finally looks silver. This is really one of the shiniest, best surfer figures that we've gotten since the days of Vac Metal surfers all the way back in the Toy Biz line. Great Norin Rad head sculpt. It's not too alien. It's not too human. It's just right. Really good paint wash around the eyes. He's on kind of the new standard male body, all pinless joints, really can get into some super crouching positions. You got multiple hands, so you get the surfer look. And his board stays on his feet really, really well. You can see that he's got one peg on there and it stays great. I just, sometimes simple and classic works. Now, I told you that I was attracted to the oddballs. All the way back in the first issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Palmer, yeah, look it up, Stan Lee couldn't even be bothered to keep his main character's name consistent from one issue to the next. Palmer saved a failed space capsule and the hero astronaut inside, none other than John Jameson, son of Daily Bugle publisher J. Jonah Jameson, who, of course, used this against Spider-Man. On a later moon mission, John found the mythical Godstone, a ruby that attached itself to his neck, which, when exposed to moonlight, transformed him into the monstrous Man-Wolf. This version of the character made it into 6-inch form in the Spider-Man Classics line. The fact that we got one Man-Wolf figure is a Christmas miracle in and of itself, but then Hasbro actually gave us a second version, this time in his Star God form, which came in the first Magic the Gathering wave. I've been collecting Marvel Legends for over 20 years, from all the way back at the beginning, and It's so great to still get surprised. I was at San Diego Comic-Con where this figure made its debut. It just showed up in the case with the other figures in the first wave of the Magic the Gathering ones, and far and away, immediately for me, this was the standout. And look, they did not cheap out on this thing at all. What a great sculpt to capture the unique look of John Jameson as the Star God. Love the fact that it's got an articulated mouth. That's really cool. He actually has arrows that come out. So some of them you can actually pull them out. So if you want to have one in his hand where he's shooting his bow and arrow, his sword comes out of its scabbard there. The only thing I have any just small little gripe about is that the strap across his chest tends to cover up the Godstone. It's just like you have to kind of have it in a good position. And this guy kind of tends to be in more of a crouched sort of look to begin with. Oh, it's so classic. I'm not really interested at all because I'm throwing the card around. I'm not really interested in the Magic the Gathering stuff. And I don't love the fact that this thing cost a fair amount more because of it. But when you get a premium figure of an obscure rare character, I'm all in. The 8th spot is for lovers.
Is this your first time at the Welshly Arms Hotel?
And are you here without a lover?
I really couldn't decide between two of Marvel's most famous swinging singles for this spot. I came really close to going with Star Fox, Marvel's living embodiment of desire in the form of the Eternal named Eros. When I first started reading Avengers in the 1980s, Star Fox was a member of the team, so in my mind, he was just as important an Avenger as the Vision, Wasp, or Hawkeye. So getting this guy in action figure form was huge for me, as it allows me to finally complete my 1980s Avengers display. But as a kid of the 80s, this spot had to go to the sensational She-Hulk. If there was one thing that shaped my love of Marvel Comics more than anything else, it was the Secret Wars miniseries from 1984. And at the conclusion of this, She-Hulk took the Thing's place in the Fantastic Four, all during the unmatched John Byrne run on the book. So now, almost 2 decades after this San Diego Comic-Con exclusive FF She-Hulky came out, we finally get an upgrade. Oh, this is such a no-brainer figure that has been a long time coming. I know that Jen here is just a simple repaint of the She-Hulk that we had gotten earlier, but that figure on this great, huge female body just looks so good. And that classic Byrne era FF uniform just works so well. I love the fact that her green is just like really bright because I think it kind of brings out her personality that this facial sculpt and this great inkjet printing technology really does. Plus, look at all the detail of that green wash over her hair. So good. Now, if you don't want her with her full locks flowing, you can go for the ponytail look with there's still just a little bit of sass in that head sculpt too. So, Jen was such a big part of my growing up, my Fantastic Four. For so many years I had way more issues of FF that had She-Hulk in it than I did that had the Thing in it because that was when I started reading the book. So this one is huge for me. Sometimes a figure makes this list because it's an engineering marvel, like Spiral, with her fully articulated 6 arms. Sometimes it makes it because of superior sculpting and remarkable likeness to the source material, like Odin. But when your focus is the intersection of comics history and action figures, sometimes it's a figure that bridges the gap or fills in a comic story in your collection. Such was the case with Deathbird. The Shi'ar Empire has played a crucial role in several of the X-Men's greatest adventures, such as the Dark Phoenix Saga and the Brood Saga, which is every bit as awesome as the Dark Phoenix story, and saw Deathbird attempt to team up with the Brood to overthrow the Shi'ar Empire. We have slowly been building up our Starjammers and Imperial Guard, so each edition is a big get. Deathbird came in a 2-pack with Gladiator, and I don't know why we continue to get more Gladiator figures instead of getting more members of the Imperial Guard, but that Gladiator was definitely an improvement over what we've seen before. But clearly the highlight of this is this Deathbird figure. Just look at how crazy that face is, that smile, that just maniacal laugh. I mean, you can just hear it. And her hair. I mean, she puts Wolverine to shame. How do you part your hair specifically down the back and have it flail out like that? Ugh. And of course, Deathbird is a member of the Shi'er, and so they are bird people, and she actually has wings. This figure kind of doesn't. This is more of like a winged cloak, but look at that great shine and all the detailed feathers in this one. I like the fact that she comes with kind of these pipes. They come and wrap around and they make it really good. And of course, these hands just go with her just maniacal, lording over sort of style. And the fact that they got her these like black nails is like a really, really nice touch. It's just a well executed figure that is going to work so well in a number of different displays. Comics kind of sucked in the 1990s. The speculator bubble had burst, the style over substance storytelling had run its course, and Marvel was bankrupt. So they took a chance and handed over a tiny corner of the Marvel Universe to creators Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti, called Marvel Knights. These two brought in some big names, like Kevin Smith on Daredevil. But it was their ability to uncover indie talent, like Brian Michael Bendis, that will be their lasting legacy. Later, with Quesada as editor-in-chief, Marvel launched the Ultimate Universe, initially with Bendis penning Ultimate Spider-Man. But it was the choice to bring on controversial writer Mark Millar to reinvent the Avengers that showed just how far comics had come from the 90s slop. Paired with artist extraordinaire Brian Hitch, the Ultimates satirically explored the Earth's mightiest heroes, warts and all. This one is definitely a sentimental call on my part because of how blown away I was by Brian Hitch's artwork on the Ultimates. That story had it all. It completely revamped the way that you thought about the Earth's mightiest heroes with all new designs, all new characterizations. And even though there was a lot of, old Tony Stark that was in the character, so much of I think what you found on the screen with Robert Downey Jr. came from the way that he was portrayed in the Ultimates. And this figure captures Hitch's artwork to a T. It's got the giant kind of triangular shoulders, that almost kind of anime sort of head that's, kind of flails out almost like a Shogun warrior. And of course, the blue, the electric blue against the red looks so good. Now, normally when we're looking at these Iron Man figures, I'm always talking about, oh, the red's so shiny. This is one where the gunmetal gray, instead of just being super flat, it's actually got some sheen to it. So it's such a huge part of the costume. The fact that it isn't just a matte finish, that it's got some shine, just brings the entire suit of armor together. We've come to the midpoint of our countdown, so I thought I'd go with a couple of mid figures. Was there anything more overhyped and under-delivering than Marvel Legends Maximum line? Okay, let's start out with Maximum Hulk. It's a really, really good Hulk figure. I mean, it's big, it's bulky, he had lots of extra hands. I think we all wonder how this rubbery, puffy stuff is going to last, but it does give us the ability to really get some major bend. So you get the big flailed out Hulk, but you can also put the clapping hands on and have them come completely together. So I think that that's look, they're trying different things. And if there's one thing that the Maximum line should do, it should try some different things. So we're going to give them a point for that. Also, something that I absolutely love is the fact that they leaned heavily into comic looks. You got an Ed McGuinness head, and you got a Mike Diodato head, and a Dale Keown head. Awesome. The Keown head maybe doesn't quite fit with the raging, musculature, but still, these are specifically designed after individual artists, people who had great, famous runs on Incredible Hulk. So we'll give this one a pretty good grade because they did some different things. They gave us comic accurate likenesses, and he also had some pretty cool accessories. I mean, this one actually kind of my favorite. So not too bad for the Hulk. Deadpool feels, a little bit like a cash grab. I mean, sure, you get all of this stuff, and that's a lot of accessories. I mean, that's lots of guns, lots of hands, different heads, chimichangas, all kinds of stuff. But the figure itself is, kind of a regular Marvel Legends figure. He's got good articulation. I really wish we could see more of this type of joint at the diaphragm, I think it allows for so much more personality. He's got everything else that you want, toes, double pinless, all that sort of stuff. But kind of getting this double ball. There's a little bit of a now, I guess there's not really a ball there, but there's definitely a ball here. And I think that does work really well. Certainly Spider-Man, Daredevils, any of those type of characters, really just about anybody, because it is fairly seamless. It really doesn't disrupt the sculpt very much. But we've gotten some really good Daredevils, and it's hard for me to say that this one is maximum, in any kind of way, unless you want to talk about the fact that he did come with dupe, and dupe certainly would make anything maximum. So for dupe alone, he's moving up to the 5 spot. Hey, if y'all are having as much fun watching this as I had making it, give the video a like and subscribe to Carbon Scoring, because we're bringing you quality content like this every week. One of the biggest hits of 2025 was the Gamerverse series, but let's get real and call it what it is. It's Marvel vs. Capcom. I thought about putting Shuma Gorath in this spot. Gargantos. But he's looking so good posed on my shelf, I didn't want to drag him out. Psylocke, Wolvie, or even Venom would have been good choices as well. But my favorite figure so far in this line, it's Captain America. So again, why this Cap? When we've gotten pretty much definitive versions in the Marvel Legends 20th Anniversary series, and more recently, the Secret Wars, which was a really great comic-accurate Cap. One reason. It's these shoulders. Yeah, look at this. Cap has these gorgeous, huge butterfly shoulders that really allow for some amazing articulation and posing. Now, what you have to sacrifice in order to get these is you don't get the sculpted out chainmail on the top of Cap's uniform. Now, that's actually something it's been around the whole time Cap has been around, but it's been drawn in much more prominently since the days of John Cassidy, when he was drawing the Cap series, and kind of everybody has sort of followed suit. But a good old-fashioned 80s Captain America, you really didn't see much of the chainmail. It was just sort of a couple of little points there. So it's not a huge negative. Not when you can get him where he can throw his shield so much better because of these shoulders. I love the blue. It's that same kind of comic accurate that we got with the Secret Wars version. He's big, he's bulky, he looks like he's in charge. This is a top 10 Captain America. It is no secret that I love Secret Wars more than just about anything. Sorry, family. So when Dwight and Dan announced that more Secret Wars figures were coming, I started making plans to replace that modern Falcon in my Avengers display with the classic one we've been needing for so long. But that will have to wait, because instead we got one of the more interesting inclusions in the original Secret Wars line, Iceman. Iceman was not in the Secret Wars comic, which wasn't that big of a deal, as almost half of the figures in the line didn't appear in the miniseries. No, Frosty was in the final wave of 3 figures, released only in Europe at the very end of the line, and in limited numbers, making him one of the most valuable and highly desired figures of the 1980s. And considering the recent Iceman we got was one of the worst figures of the past few years, this is pretty sweet redemption. If we're talking about maximum figures, this is probably as close as we're ever going to get to a maximum Iceman, because it truly has everything that you could possibly want in an Iceman figure. First of all, he's made of ice, right? And so the translucent plastic just works so well, and you can see just how great it looks. And yeah, you can kind of get an idea of the way that the joints work underneath. That doesn't bother me in the least. I think this look is so good for Bobby that it just completely works. I love the fact that they included a smiling head sculpt, because his personality, particularly in the early days, was he was the goof. He was like the youngest one. He was the one that was kind of the fun-loving guy. But if you need more of an angry, battle-ready Iceman, you've got that head as well. Again, fully translucent. He comes with basically every accessory that you could possibly want in an Iceman figure. First, of course, you've got an ice sleigh, an ice sled. His main mode of transportation was making these sort of, ice sleds. And of course, this is translucent as well. It's got a nice peg right there, so you can peg him right on. And like the leading edge of it, I'm assuming the peg is for his back foot. The leading edge is all frosted up, which is the way that it always looked in the comics and on the cartoons. But how would he do that? He would use his ice powers and have them kind of blast out of his hands down to the ground to form this. And so these things just so neatly clip right onto his wrist so that you can replicate the way that he uses his powers with these really gorgeously sculpted, nicely painted, translucent as well ice pieces. So if they hadn't gone translucent here, I don't think these would work as well or look as good with the figure as they do. But coming back to that smiling head, you get one more accessory, and that is a hand with a snowball. And yeah, the snowball comes out. So if you go and you look at the cover of the first issue of X-Men, I think Bobby is like throwing snowballs at Magneto, which shockingly didn't work, but it's just such a cool throwback. And I guess what I really love is they captured the vibe of Iceman so well. Okay, for real. I put this guy at number 2 on my list because I thought he looked so freaking cool, and he does. But as I did my homework, I realized there's some pretty messed up stuff with Phantom Rider. First off, his name originally was Ghost Rider, and he first appeared in Magazine Enterprise's horror comics in the 1950s. But after the Comics Code ended horror mags, he basically disappeared, and the trademark to the character lapsed. Enter Marvel Comics, who scooped him up and put him in his own mag with Ghost Rider #1 in February of 1967. He would keep the name until the first appearance of Johnny Blaze in 1972, at which time the Phantom Rider would be retconned, first with the highly unfortunate name Knight Rider. And no, not because of this guy, because of these guys. Knight Riders were another name for members of the Klan. And yet somehow this story gets worse. Now in main Marvel continuity, the third Phantom Rider, Lincoln Slade, becomes infatuated with the Avenger Mockingbird, kidnaps her, drugs her, and forces himself on her. In response, Mockingbird allows him to fall to his death. Let's just talk about the figure. Yeah, I bet you didn't know all that stuff. You're looking at old Phantom Rider a little bit differently now, aren't you, after getting some of that backstory? This guy is so cool. So, yeah, I know it's just a big white figure, and there's not even a lot of overlay of paint to try to, bring out more of the sculpt. He's just pretty much white, has his cape, has his hat. Of course, the gradation of the shading around the eyes really does make a huge difference in the look. And when that's really the only deco, it makes them stand out that much more. I love the fact that he came with his Western, like, Colt 45 pistols here. I wonder if these are the same ones that they used in like the G.I. Joe classified line. I think Wild Bill came with something similar to this. Be kind of cool. Somebody may know the thing there. Of course, he also has his holsters. So as just a figure, he looks really good. But we're going to take it up a notch. Oh, yeah, baby. Check it out. For $1 from my friend Mitch at Retro Toy Con in Greenville, South Carolina, just about a month ago, I was able to pick up this Lord of the Rings white horse. And yeah, he even, has an action feature on him. I did spend a little bit of time just sort of trimming up the saddle so that it fit more the look of Phantom Rider. But you put him on this white horse and it is an all new figure. This is the way that I have him displayed down in the secret lounge, like right behind Ghost Rider on his bike. Oh, he looks so good riding this thing. This is what really completes this look. From the second I laid eyes on this guy, there was never going to be anyone else in the top spot for 2025. Let's dig into the history of Rom the Space Knight. The toy industry of the late 1970s was dominated by one thing: Star Wars. But even that behemoth couldn't scoop up every single toy dollar. Enter Bing McCoy. Bing was a touring musician with artists like Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris, but his background in electronics and his insatiable curiosity led him to becoming a toy inventor, initially with Electronic Battleship, which he developed with board game company Milton Bradley in 1977. With a certified hit on his resume, his next invention may have been even better: the Starbird. Also licensed to Milton Bradley, Starbird at first looks like a simple Star Wars knockoff, a hybrid of like a Y-Wing fighter on the front and an X-Wing fighter on the back, with the laser turret from the Falcon stuck on top. Even the Starbird logo borders on trademark infringement, with that of the Rebel Alliance. Still, it's a pretty awesome looking ship. But that's not what makes it legendary. As with all creations by Bing McCoy, it's the electronics. For his next hit, McCoy devised an Egyptian mystic whose electronic features allowed it to meditate. No one was interested, so he went back to the drawing board and came up with COBOL, a cyborg named after the computer coding language that even at the time was kind of dated. But there was enough there for Parker Brothers, another toy company known only for board games, to take a chance and buy the idea from McCoy. They kept the electronic guts of COBOL intact, but changed the design and the name to ROM. Parker Brothers produced a promotional video for the 1979 New York Toy Fair. The narration even provided some of the mythology that would become central to the character moving forward.
Far, far away, in another galaxy, the Knights of the Soul Star Order, defenders of justice and truth, have been ambushed by the evil magicians, the Dire Wraiths. He is Rom, Lord of the Soul Star Order, Rom the Wraith Slayer, Rom the Space Knight.
While the story was clearly influenced by Star Wars with the whole far, far away in another galaxy line, the toy buyers were interested, and by Christmas of 1979, ROM was on store shelves and under Christmas trees. Beginning in December of 1979, Marvel Comics published the adventures of Rom the Space Knight. The title ran for 75 issues through February of 1986 and told the story of the hero of Galador who sacrificed his humanity to save first his planet, then the entire universe from the deadly Dire Wraiths. Oh man, I absolutely love this figure, and I am not afraid to say I think this is honestly one of my favorite Marvel Legends figures ever made, and definitely one of my favorite figures in my collection. Jesse Falcon, the father of Marvel Legends, was instrumental in getting this figure made, from making sure that they had the license and obviously to making sure that this guy was done right. You know, when you get a Wolverine, when you get a Captain America, when you get a Spider-Man, you can pretty safely assume it's not going to be the last one of that character that you ever get, that you're going to get another shot at those guys. I mean, good grief. I mean, how many like Colossus and Nightcrawler figures have we gotten? A ton, right? But this was going to be the one go at ROM, and they made certain they did it right. Every detail from the original toy through the look of the comics is included in this. The backpack is absolutely perfect. Look at how they got like a gradiated red so that it looks like it's firing off. Obviously, his mask or his helmet is so great, and those eyes look exactly like they looked on Sal Buscema's cover. I don't usually spend a ton of time talking about articulation in figures, but this one is just it is import worthy in the way that you can get him into so many poses, and yet it does not disrupt the sculpt. You know, this cut is hidden by the boots, the arms. This diaphragm is really what makes it, because you can get so much life out of it. He came with his weapons, which is so cool. They got the hands right, that he has sort of these sort of mitten like hands, even down to the crazy feet are completely new and perfect. I'm telling you, man, I think this thing is absolutely brilliant. I would so love to get a Dire Wraith for him to fight against. I want, I want more Space Knights. I don't know how popular they would be, but they would be so awesome together. ROM, for sure, the best Marvel Legend of 2025. What do you think? Did I get the top 10 figures right, or did I completely screw this list up? Let me know in the comments. And as always, for the best in comics history and action figures, subscribe to Carbon Scoring.